This video has been kindly sponsored by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform for building your own brand and growing your business online. Hi everyone! Today I have another themed video for you guys, and this time it's Ghibli theme. I've always loved Ghibli movies since I was young, and they've always given me a cozy feeling inside, apart from those that are more serious in topic. The art in Ghibli movies is incredibly stunning, and the scenery is so beautiful, and I think making Ghibli themed pieces would fit my style so much, so I'm gonna do just that. With all that said, let's go ahead and get started. Figuring out designs for Ghibli in particular was actually difficult for me. I knew I wanted to make a whole bunch of different pieces based on Ghibli, whether they were recreations or inspired pieces, but I think I spent a good week or two trying to figure out what exactly I wanted to make. But the first idea that came to mind was a floor pillow. I wasn't sure who was going to be on the floor pillow first, so I was mixed between Totoro and Haku, but eventually decided on Haku. I wanted to do something with Spirited Away, and I knew I haven't made a floor pillow in a while, so I decided on that. I planned on adding Haku in dragon form in the middle with leaves bordering around to make the pillow have more nature, and I thought it would be cute to have such spirits on the sides of the pillow. The next design was a recreation of a blanket from Arrietty. I haven't watched Arrietty in a very long time, but I remember thinking how cute her blanket was and deciding it would be cool to bring it to life. I knew it wasn't gonna look exactly like a quilt like hers, but a cute crochet version would satisfy me just fine. I got the cherry design from Pinterest, which I'll link down below, but for the leaf pattern, I designed it on Stitch Fiddle myself, which I've gotten the hang of recently, so it wasn't too difficult to try to make a copy of it, and I think my copy came out alright. For the Haku blanket, I started it by numbering all the graphs I was going to use for the pillow, making sure they were all the length and width that I could work with. I honestly didn't check exactly because the pillow ended up being gigantic, which isn't bad, but you'll see why I had an issue with that in a bit. I wanted there to be space on the sides of the graph so that Haku could be in the middle, so to start the front panel I chained 59, even though the graph is 48 spaces in width. Also, I ended up deciding not to do the leaf border after chaining due to me having to add more to the chain, which would make a pillow even bigger than my apartment in order to add all of that since I was using a weight 6 yarn. After chaining, I worked 4 rows of single crochet so that it would look like Haku is in the middle once the front panel is complete. After 4 rows, I used 2 stitch markers to mark where the graph would start and stop on each row before starting the graph, which was on the 6th stitch on each side. So there was 5 stitches of the background color to do before the graph even starts, if that makes sense. I went ahead and single crocheted those 5 stitches. Then removed my stitch marker from the first stitch of the design before turning my attention to the graph. So I want to make it clear that I actually did the graph wrong here. If you want your design to come out exactly as it looks on the graph, you should start your odd rows right to left for the right side of the project, then work the even rows from left to right for the wrong side of the project. But I actually haven't worked on a graph in a while, so I actually started with the left side of the row first on the odd rows. So the instructions I show are correct, but just start with the right side, not the left like I do. Anyways, how I did the graph is basically just looked at the graph to see how many stitches I need in the background color. Each box represents a stitch, so since it says there's 20 boxes, I need to do 20 single crochets with the background color. So I went ahead and did that until the 19th stitch. After finishing the 19th stitch, I worked into the 20th stitch with half a single crochet. This is done because on the graph, the next 3 spaces are a new color, and in order to start a new color, I need to attach it before the color is needed, making sure the tail goes in the back since I'm currently working on the side of the project that will be seen. So I take my new color yarn and attach it to the last stitch of the current color by using it to complete the 20th single crochet. Then after that, I can go ahead and work the next 2 stitches with the new color. On the 3rd stitch that's needed with the new color, I see that I need to work 25 stitches with the old color, so I go ahead and drop the new color and pick up the old color that's still already attached and finished the single crochet in the 3rd stitch. Then I work the 25 stitches, which ends on the stitch marker stitch. I add the stitch marker to the new stitch Then finish the last 5 stitches outside the graph. It's incredibly easy, but you can also easily mess up if you're not paying close attention to the graph and what you're actually doing. At the end of the row, I chained 1 and turned my work. After finishing the first 5 stitches of the second row, I took off my stitch marker to start the second row of the graph. The second row says there's 26 stitches of the background color to do, so I go ahead and do 25 of them. On the 26th stitch, I work half a single crochet before seeing that I need to do 1 stitch with the second color, add a third color for 1 stitch, and then use the second color for the third stitch. So I take my second color that's already attached and finish the single crochet. Since I'm working on the side that won't be seen when the project is finished, I make sure that the tails of the yarn fall into the front of the project this time. Then I work half a single crochet in the next stitch with the second color before taking my third color and attaching it to finish the single crochet. I work half a single crochet in the next with my third color before taking my second color and finishing it, then did the same for the next stitch before taking my first color and finishing that single crochet. For this side, I actually took a new skein of the first color to have on this side so that the yarn won't have to stretch far across the project, which will make the stitches pull and make the overall design look bad. Then the graph says to do 19 stitches with the background color, so I went ahead and did that. After reaching my stitch marker, I attached it to the new stitch and then finished up the row. The entire graph sections of the pillow is made just like that, gradually working up the graph until everything has been crocheted. It takes a while to do, and for some reason I felt so tired after each row and questioned why I was even doing this. It's funny because I do this with every single project I do, but when it's done and I see the result, I'm like, okay, what's next? And then the cycle continues. But while I did this, the internet was actually out, and I feel like that was the best part of working on this project for a little bit. It just felt so peaceful not having internet access for about a couple of hours, and then I ended up using my phone to watch Invincible because I needed something to watch while working. Once the entire graph was complete, I was so happy with it. To finish it off, I added 4 extra rows of single crochet to the top. The next day, I got started with the sides, and at this point, I really questioned why I was doing this because only now did I realize I have to make 4 different panels of Soot Spirit designs. For the Soot Spirit graph, I chained 25 and used this one graph I found on Pinterest and just worked on it for a total of 58 rows with no extra chains for the sides or anything. Here's how the Haku came out, and this is how the Soot Spirits came out, and I'm okay with how Haku came out even though it is inverted since I started on the left side instead of the right side of the graph. But for this one, I did start on the right side and worked from right to left on the right sides and then left to right on the wrong sides. And while working on this, I realized that I'm only going to be able to make 1 more of these with the yarn that I have. And for this, this is actually going to be on the bottom, and I didn't realize that I would have preferred the Soot Spirits to be faced horizontally instead of vertically how it is now, but I realized that way too late, and I'm just going to go ahead and go with it. So this is going to be the top and the bottoms when I make the second panel, but then for the left sides and the right sides, I think I'm just gonna do a solid green color if I have enough yarn for that, just because I am running out of the black chunky yarn and I won't be able to make any more Soot Spirits, but I am still going to try just in case I can make them. But yeah, this is how it's coming out, and it looks pretty exciting and really, really big. After finishing the Soot Spirit sides, I began working on the last 2 sides, which I decided to do stripes for with the colors I used on Haku that was left over. I had no clue if this would look good or not, but I hoped it would at least be cohesive in color since, like I said 2 seconds ago, they were the same colors I used on Haku. But even here, I was running out of those colors also, so I had to improvise with the stripe pattern a bit with whatever I had more of. For these long sides, I chained 25 and worked 67 rows of single crochet. I just finished the 2 other sides that I need, so all 4 sides are done, and then I already got started with the bottom, and I do not care what the bottom looks like at all since you're not going to see it, so I'm just using up all of my chunky yarn. I already used up all except for this one, and then I went in my closet and I ended up finding these. And for this one, this is weight 5, everything else is weight 6, so I'm gonna have to double this. if these run out. Hopefully they don't, and this is enough to finish the rest of the back panel. But yeah, wish me luck. The bottom panel was the easiest by far for me, and since I was scared of running out of the yarn, I ended up doing a chain of 58 and working half double crochet for 48 rows. Also, maybe because I just wanted it to be done already. After all the panels were finally complete, I set them down with the wrong sides facing up and began to slip stitch them to their designated areas on the front panel. After finishing one panel, I just took another panel and continued to slip stitch that one onto it as well. Also, I started the slip stitching to the front panel first so that when everything was attached, I could pull it inside out from the bottom of the pillow and not have the stitches show when it was time to close it. So after all the sides were all attached, including the sides of the sides, I attached the back panel until there was a large gap left. I used that gap to pull the pillow right side out and then began to stuff the pillow. I used 2 fillings I got from Joann's, some extra yarn scraps, and even some fabrics I don't use, and clothes that I don't wear, and I just stuffed it with anything that could make it look like a pillow, and eventually it did. Once it was stuffed, I slip stitched the bottom closed, and my Haku pillow was finally complete. Here is the final result of the Haku pillow, and this is so big. I'll have a little clip to show you how big it is, because it looks big on camera, but you can't really tell how big this is. After finishing the front part, I realized that this is going to be way bigger than the Hello Kitty pillow, and I also wanted these right here with the soot spirits to be all around, but like you saw, I ran out of yarn, so I had to improvise on the sides a little, and I was a little iffy about if it was going to work or not, because I was doing stripes and I would prefer the whole pillow to be the green. But thankfully it wasn't that bad since I used the same colors I used on Haku for the sides as well. And I also stuffed it a little bit differently than I did with the Hello Kitty pillow. With the Hello Kitty pillow, I just used a whole bunch of scrap yarn and then some cotton. But for this, I bought 2 pillows from Joann's, which still has horrible sales going on right now, even though they're closing in like a month. But that wasn't enough, so I did use some scrap yarn also, and then some extra fabrics that I'm not using at all. So sewing fabrics, some clothes I don't wear, I just stuffed it in this pillow, and it works. It's more stable than the Hello Kitty pillow, and when you sit on it, it still leaves kind of like a dent, but in the Hello Kitty pillow, it won't like just bounce up like this. Like, you can still leave a little dent, but all you just have to do is really kick it a couple of times and it'll go back to how it was, which I like a lot better than the Hello Kitty one. And this just makes it more durable and will last longer. Also, during the tutorial portion of this video, I did show that I did this starting from the wrong side. So that's why it's flipped. It's supposed to be the other way around, but it doesn't really matter. It still came out really nice. I do like how the soot spirits came out on both sides. I do wish they could have been facing me instead of looking like to the side, but these are all just minor nitpicks. But all in all, I really like how it came out. The second project I worked on was actually a Totoro sweater. I was planning on making a cute orange sweater with the fun Totoro graph on it, but I didn't design the graph how I'd want it to be, and my hands were hurting too much from knitting with the chunky yarn, so I ended up scrapping it and holding it off until I think about wanting to finish the sweater. I definitely will, since the yarn is really nice, and I already finished half of this sweater, so I'm not about to take this apart, but at the moment I had to just stop for my hand's sake. So the second project actually was the Arrietty blanket. For Arrietty's blanket, I have this yarn here. I realized that I didn't order any of these because I assumed that I had a color for the cherry squares, which I do, which I'm going to use this one. For the green, I don't have a color that accurately fits this specific green. So I'm trying to figure out which one I should do. I feel like I might just do this big twist one here, just because it's more brighter and more saturated. And then, of course, I have this white here. And so what I'm going to do first is just make all of the basic granny squares for it, and then after use these to make the graphics. I got started with the solid granny squares, which I show how I do it in my red crochet video. This blanket is actually incredibly similar to the blanket I did there. The only difference is the graphs I used, so if you want to make this blanket, I show how I do it in that video, and then you can just use the graphs that I have linked in the description box below. But yeah, I just worked on all the solid granny squares in white while watching The Walking Dead for the first time. I ended up recently finishing all 11 seasons, which is something I've never done with a TV show within the time span I did. I've never binged ever, and it felt strange to actually finish 11 seasons of a show within a month. I'm never doing that again, but wow. I really liked the show though. I went ahead and did a total of 6 of the white squares just to see how long it is. And since each of the squares are about 7 inches, this ended up being 40 inches. And I think I'm okay with that for a blanket size because I don't really like lap blankets. I want a blanket to like fully cover me. But this being a 6x6 blanket, I think is good enough for me. And so I'm gonna go ahead and adjust all of the squares that I have to do and then get all of them done. I listened to some new albums while I finished up the granny squares, which was cool, and I also finished reading Beloved by Toni Morrison. After I got to making the graph squares, and when working on them, I realized the granny squares being 5 rows were actually too small, so I ended up adding 2 extra rows to each of the squares so that they were the right size to attach to the graph ones. For the cherry graph in particular, they weren't large enough to fit the 32 by 32 size I wanted, so I chained 33 to start like I did with the leaf graph squares, but I made sure to mark with a stitch marker 3 stitches on one side and 4 stitches on the other so that the graph could still be in the center. The same thing I did with the Haku graph for the pillow earlier. After all the squares were done, I placed them where they needed to go based on the actual blanket from the movie, but flipped so that after attaching it on the wrong sides, the right side will be exactly how it's shown here. To attach them, I just slip stitched them together, columns first and then rows. Everything was attached and looking cute, but it needed a border, so I worked 1 row of single crochet around the entire blanket with green, and then after I decided to add ruffles. For those, I just did 3 half double crochets in 1 stitch, and then a slip stitch in the next, and then repeated that until the end of the row. And after all of that, I just weaved in all my ends, and the blanket was complete. Here is the final blanket from Arrietty, and this came out a lot bigger than I thought it was going to. When I was first designing it and did a couple of the squares, I measured them and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to add an additional column or 2 just to make it big enough to be a usable blanket. But then once I started doing the actual graph squares, they came out pretty big, so I actually went from doing 5 rows of this to 7 rows instead, so I had to add 2 additional rows to each of the white squares, and the size is perfect to me, honestly. I really like how the leaf squares came out. I had to design this myself and I'm really proud that it came out good. It could have been better, I'm not gonna lie, but it works, you know. And then the cherry one I just found on Pinterest. The only thing though is that I do wish that the white squares were the same color as the cherries, so the whole thing would be beige instead, but I had more white than I did with beige, so it just had to be like this, which is fine. It's really cute. And after, just to make everything neater, I added a ruffle border around, which I wasn't sure was looking nice, especially when I was working around the orange squares, but at the end of the day, it looks really cute and I'm really happy with it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! I don't know how to wave this way, but bye! Before we go, I want to quickly say thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're creating a website to offer services, sell products, or to just showcase your art portfolio, Squarespace makes it easy to create a beautiful website and engage with your audience. Squarespace has an incredibly easy website builder, which will help you get started whether you're someone who prefers to use a professionally designed template, or if you want to go deeper into the designing process, Squarespace has the tools to help you build a site just how you'd like it. If you're someone who's wanting to sell products, whether they're physical, digital, or even memberships, Squarespace has all the tools you need to get started, like their commerce tool, which allows you to track orders you've received and even offers ways to develop your shop even further. You can even engage with your audience by sending out newsletters with their email campaigns, which are completely customizable and come with analytics for you to keep track of engagement and help improve your marketing strategies. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/ecoshun to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video.